we're going to be checking out Deep Dive, the Digimon Ghost Game Serial Killer Deep Dive from Deep Dive of the channel Deep Dive. I know, I've never said his name before. I have no idea what it is. Last time around in the first part, he went into a really good deep dive on the various structures for other Digimon series. So I'm going to assume, looking at the title, this is going to be the Rogue Strategy tipping its hand. I have no idea what that leads into, so I'm going to be very curious. After the first few seasons of Digimon, I kind of fell off the anime. So a lot of what he's saying is brand new to me, and I really like it. And also, I'm very surprised at how many insane levels of characterization they have for so many different types of Digimon. It's actually pretty awesome. Oh, and Haga got that it was a Calvin Hobbes reference? Yes. Oh, I thought that looked familiar. Noise. So yeah, let's see where this goes. What?
Sense. It doesn't make any
Oh, it jumped back a bit.
It doesn't make any sense.
I think something happened there.
Dive deeper.
Okay. That happened.
Okay, so Masashi insists the Ghost Game is mostly episodic, but a third of it clearly isn't. Which makes
third?
it even more baffling that, event-wise, so little happens in the middle. And yet, there was obviously a lot of meticulous thought put into the world and setup, which is
There
evident
was?
from the background storytelling. For
There's
example,
background
in
storytelling?
Episode 2, we see Mummymon step outside a husk in a display case, but then, when he tries to step through the glass, he bounces off. He's perturbed for a moment, but closes his eyes, concentrates, and manages to step through. This is visually establishing the rules of Ghost Game's mechanics before they're explained more explicitly in Episode 8. Likewise, the mechanic by which ultimate evolutions would be timed out but Mega seemed immune to the timer was explained later on too. This is the show teaching us to pay attention to the details. But there's
It has
more.
details?
Let's hop back a little bit. After the emergence of Gulas Gamamon, a dark evolution, we get another dark variant of Agumon watching from a distance. In addition, Gamamon himself is distinctly white and all of his champion forms are fractal-based colours. So, the natural assumption to make here is that whatever Ghost Game's central plot is about, it's got something to do with colours and dark Digimon. Then, episode 20 rolls around and it opens with two dark Digimon in a house on fire and a man burning to death.
Oh,
They specifically
okay,
target
that
Hero
escalated.
and threaten his friends, and you think, this is it. The coalition of dark Digimon, perhaps enemies of Hokuto, are coming to finally kick this thing into second gear. And then, not only is this not the case, but in actuality, the two Digimon were trying to save the man in the house on fire. But because he and his neighborhood saw them as nothing but monsters, he dies. And a raging mob scorns them. If this whiplash was on purpose, and I think it was,
Oh, they literally watched a man burn to death as part of the show. Okay. Was not expecting that change. Damn.
then it's fucking brilliant. Because by using our genre expectations of how these stories play out, not only did it subvert our expectations and make the Dark Digimon victims of a saw, but it made us, the viewers, complicit in their discrimination. Like, you could say it's a cheap trick given they're literally made of fire and they were acting pretty shady, but it's a cheap trick that worked. We had circumstantial evidence at best and we were ready to assume the worst about them.
Yeah.
And now looking back, we can see the opposite is true. Digimon that already have Black Digitron in their cores were the only ones that were immune to Gulas' GRB virus.
The
and
what?
many of them helped save the day
GRB? Green, red, blue.
in the end. To be able to screw with our expectations like this requires a savvy level of anticipation on the writer's part. So why were they doing us so dirty in the middle? Hero sends a letter to his father making a proactive move to establish contact, and so many episodes later we
Whoa.
learn he just asked, how do you deal with strong Digimon? And the answer is basically go fuck yourself. They introduce Espimon as an envoy from Hero's dad, but he doesn't believe Hero is really who he says he is because Hokuto described Hero as his spitting image and Espimon took it too literally, and we're like, okay, as soon as this little misunderstanding is resolved, this will be the pivot point into the next stage of a story. And how does it resolve?
おい北斗何がヒロは俺とウリ二つだ適当言いやがって
それなんだっけ
That's actually a plot point. Oh my god, you said he looked just like you, but he doesn't look just like you. I think I would have divisive opinions about this. Like, I would probably love some things and then be very tempted to make videos like Deep Dive does, but very, very disturbing ones. Mostly because it would involve my editing skill, and there's a reason you don't see many cuts in these videos.
Even earlier, they tease us with the return of Drachmon. He shows up later as a lackey in another episode and just dies! In an episode
Seriously?
with no less than 3 Digimon that are canonical evolutions to Drachmon! He could have been the main baddie. He could have been the second in command. He could have been the fucking dog!
He just dies?
And you know what else
Really?
is weird? This is the Kanna Weissmon episode. This episode that focuses on Ruli and Reed's lined up. This is the show telling us, nay, screaming at us, that we're looking in the wrong place.
I mean, that's one interpretation, but when you line up a bunch of threads over and over and over again, this is just me being a writing major right here. That's not an indication of telling your audience you're looking in the wrong place. It's bad writing. It's called a plot hole. Because when you have a bunch of threads and you don't adjust them or do anything with them, it's bad writing. Usually done by people who know what good writing is, but are under a time crunch. They're just throwing out ideas to see what happens.
Now this isn't going to go down the way we think it is. And if so,
There's good ways to do
we're
that.
not
This doesn't
supposed
sound
to
like
be
it.
focusing on plot progressions or shifts in the status quo like we usually do, then what should we be focusing on? And has the show already given us all the clues we need to understand it? And when all is said and done, what was Ghost Game even about?
Money.
Fishing. Fishing.
We've talked a bit about plot threads and character arc, but what about theme and allegory, those ghostly qualities that permeate through the subtext of the work? In Adventure, it's understood that the Digimon partners are an external representation of the Digidestined's character growth. The stronger and more self-realized they are, the stronger their Digimon are.
Yeah.
Likewise, if they're all messed up, you get Zombie Dino Rampage. That's the mechanics of the magic system anyway. But, as the old song goes, Adventure is about 7 young kids who went to camp one summer. At summer camp, you expose yourself to the uncontrollable elements of nature with a motley group of strangers. Together, you must overcome challenges as
I just noticed as he became more unhinged, the wise guy mug is actually leaking more. I'm not sure if it was there before, but I just noticed it now, so it works
a
better.
team, building character, learning skills, and forging bonds that will last a lifetime. I think I've never been, and I never will. And at the end of it all,
Lifetime. Depending on which season you're looking at, those bonds may or may not have lasted.
you go your separate ways, out of sight, but never out of mind. That's what Adventure is on a macro level. Heightened fantasy camping. Hiking, sleeping rough, kindling fires, hunting and foraging, fending off the local wildlife, and various predators.
There's a joke in here about how it's fantasy going to school in Detroit. But that's not fair. New Jersey's much more accurate.
And Satan. Even in the final episodes, one of the last things they do is discuss how many more days of summer they have left. But then we have examples on a micro level. Let's take Izzy's Crest episode. When separated from the group, he falls into a deep pit, and a squidgy alien man offers him salvation in exchange for his curiosity. He complies and then works on his ABCs. But while Vaidwan is distracted watching a devil bean trying to take a huge shit, Tentomon breaks Izzy out of his fugue state, and they blast their way out of there.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
This is weird. This is a weird thing to happen. That's fine. I like weird. Weird's fine in my book. But it wasn't until years later that it finally hit me. While farting about doing side quests in Yakuza 0, I stumbled across an interesting group of people.
Of course they would have a cult in a Japanese Yakuza game. Because there's a massive cult issue in Japan. Like, there's a lot of them.
And suddenly, all the iconography clicked into place. Izzy joined a cult.
Oh!
And that makes perfect sense because cult mentality is the antithesis to Izzy's crest of knowledge. Knowledge is hard fought. It can be grueling, lonely, and even when you get the answers, it's not always comforting. Izzy literally falls down into a dark pit, alone, isolated, with nothing but the expansive, cold cosmos to remind him of how small and insignificant he is. And in exchange for salvation, he gives up his critical thinking, his earthly possessions, and numbs himself with pseudo-Zen meditation. It's only through reconnecting with a loved one that he's able to reattain self-consciousness and get out of there.
You know, that's the kind of context that I don't think I would have ever got, because that's not quite the situation here. But considering this would have come out in the 2090s era, this would have been close after, I think there was a much more recent terrorist attack by a cult on a subway there. I think that was like the 90s or 80s. So it would have still been in the cultural zeitgeist. So this would have been a much more poignant episode in Japan at the time. If anything, I'm actually surprised I'm only hearing about this now. When this came out on TV, I only watched it sporadically because, well, kid.
Out of my way, jerkers!
I got the gist of this when I was a kid, but it wasn't until I was older, when I had the tools and information, the right
And
keys, that I was able
Majima,
to
be
pass the
Majima.
creative choices being made here. Woo, this is fun. What else is there? 02. I mean, that's just Computer Club, right? That's why they can go home and hop back and forth at will. It's also why they're all a bunch of huge dorks.
Yep.
It's like how the other old song goes.
Chilling out with the crew in the schoolyard, finding trouble never.
Oh god, I haven't heard that in literally decades. Whoa. 1 second. There we go. This is
Tamers?
that's a lot.
That's a tricky one. Maybe the concept of escapism itself, since they're in a world where Digimon is a legit franchise. Takato is the nerdy Jaden type who just wants to have fun. Rika's the Seto Kaiba type who takes it all too seriously. And
Oh god, they went Yu-Gi-Oh! It actually makes perfect sense considering they were literally playing a card game.
Henry's a mediator who just wants to keep the peace. And of course, they're all using escapism to get away from their depressing home lives. Frontier?
Most of them depressing.
Something about industrializing the West with infrastructure while the white
Let's be fair, Frontier didn't have a plot. It had a bunch of scenes that just ended with the show ending. I have opinions.
devil incites
It was
race wars
disappointing.
to gain financial and political power, and maybe that sounds far-fetched, but it does end with them stealing a bunch of land. Okay, easy one. Our war game. While most of the main series treat the digital world as more of a fantasy land to tell broader stories about personal growth and connection, our war game is more overtly a commentary on our relationship to technology and the internet, and a relatively balanced one that uses a lot of duality. Just to stay
Yeah.
a bit off course, you know how through the film Ty's having trouble rallying the gang, Joe's taking a test, Kari's at a birthday party, Sora's in a bad mood? It creates this funny juxtaposition between the epic battle going on inside the computer and the silly mundane stuff that's just getting in the way. But then, when things take a turn for the worse, and the nuclear missile is launched at Tokyo, everything's flipped. Suddenly, all these silly nuisances aren't the problem, they're what's at stake. All these precious, boring, everyday life occurrences will be wiped off the face of the earth, and that's what the heroes are fighting to protect. And it
Again, our war game. I only know it as the Digimon First movie, but I know that's because it was wrapped in with a bunch of others, and it is still an amazing show. And if it looks familiar, it's because Summer Wars. Same guy. It's like his entire style, his entire shtick, and I'm glad he did other movies because they're amazing. I love them. Oh, and God, Bell, fucking A, man. Which is also the same guy. If you know the movie, you probably know why I'm saying that.
does this with a few things. Early in the film, the gang receive a massive influx of emails, some of them rather choice.
Your Digimon's a loser.
What did you say?
How could 2 mega-level Digimon get beat by 1 lousy bug?
Internet.
Or Greymon quit like a coward?
You take that back, girl!
I was reading an email from another kid.
You didn't have to read it so well.
Hey, you
Done
two,
that.
This isn't the time to be fighting.
Coming from the guy who's always fighting.
Stupid emails.
It gets
Yeah.
so bad it eats up all of their processing speed and slows War Greymon and Metal Garurumon to a near halt. To be clear, they receive a copious amount of messages from around the world, some of it hate mail, and it's so overwhelming it literally paralyzes them.
Yeah. They got DDoSed, which is funny because I'm pretty sure that was an established form of cyber attack at the time, but I'm not sure if most people knew about that outside of people who were explicitly looking for it. So it is probably one of the odd ways that people learn about that type of attack through watching a Digimon movie. Huh. I was going to make a joke about this, but halfway into it, I realized this is a legitimately good point. It might actually be accurate. I'm not sure how to feel about that. but it is fascinating.
And yet,
Monsters.
we don't always need to understand them intrinsically to enjoy something. Sometimes just feel
Yes, it was literally a slice of life for Digimon horror stories. They just got to play around with things they wouldn't in any other more structured show. And they just cobbled together a plot to give it an excuse. I'm sure that's wrong, but that's where it's kind of sounds like it's heading towards.
And while the ending may have initially seemed out of the blue, it's incredibly fitting once it frames our understanding of the whole show. And perhaps, understanding our villain is the first step to putting it all together.
I don't know where this is from. But Rogue Strategy, Section 3, Establishing a Motive.
So in the final episode, Gulas is revealed to be an alien from outer space. His home planet has been consumed by a galactic disaster known as the Endbringer, and he's arrived on Earth with the mission of
The Endbringer. I guess Behemoth got a little bit more testy than normal. Or someone was really binging Worm. For the 5 people out there who understand what I just said and are cringing internally because I'm that level of geek, hi, I'm surprised that's a surprise for anyone else.
of destroying it in 2,000 years when it catches up with him. Obviously, this goes a long way to explaining his, attitude problem. Eat or be eaten. Might makes right. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Forget it, Marge.
Alien Digimons.
It's Chinatown.
What?
When your entire home planet is destroyed, it changes a fella. Maybe life starts to feel a bit cheap. Maybe when it's in the name of the mission, any action is justified. Pragmatism above all else. There's a lot about this situation that's unclarified. Like, does the Endbringer just exist in the digital world, or maybe just the real world, or both? But it's unestablished whether
Sometimes.
it's connected to the natural world like it was in Adventure or Survive. Is Gulas from the relative digital world of an alien civilization, or does the digital world just have its own alien civilizations, unrelated to our universe?
Do they?
Or is he just a radio signal that manifested as a Digimon when it finally reached Earth?
Oh, actually, that last interpretation would probably be the most fun.
Probably not, but who knows?
Yeah.
Confused and annoyed.
All we do know is that Gulas was apparently the original owner of the body before his consciousness was locked inside Gamamon. I initially thought that Hokuto might have used the Digivice to forcibly revert him like Ryudamon was, but based on the phrasing while recollecting his meeting with Gamamon, this probably isn't the case. He was just the weird kid that everyone picked on. But based on his Monkia of Dark Lord, he must have had some appearances as Gulas before meeting Hero. So
Oh.
maybe Quantumon reverted him, or maybe he was defeated and reincarnated but somehow kept his memories, or maybe his current state is a side effect of traveling to Earth. In any case, he's a prisoner in his own body, but he's conscious and autonomous enough to plant the seed of his GRB invasion before he leaves. Gulas is always watching. Whenever Gamamon is emotionally distressed or in mortal danger, Gulas rears his head. Makes sense, he's a survivor after all. But he's unable to retain control for long, and Gamamon will re-establish himself as the dominant personality. The first time this happens on screen, it takes him by surprise. It's specifically attacking his friends and the memory of Bokumon dying that triggers his reversion. From his surprise, and the fact that he stops trying to escape just to be a dick, he probably thought that this one was a keeper. Wouldn't be the last time he makes that mistake. But Gamamon's will and connection to his friends was much stronger than he expected. In every subsequent manifestation, he relinquishes control willingly, at least after Hero refuses to sync with him. I think over the course of a series, Gulas is gradually rebuilding his strength. I think if he could have achieved his Regulus form and erased Gamamon's consciousness at any time, he would have had a much easier time doing it earlier on. Gamamon's bond with Hero, and specifically his ability to sync, is what's given him the edge in retaining dominance.
This is probably going to be something absolutely horrible to say, but considering he's already made the connection between Series 3 and Yu-Gi-Oh! I just realized what plotline they're using here, and why it sounded so familiar. This is essentially Duel Academy. Yeah, this is the Jaden Yuki of of Digimon. I don't know how to feel about this because I've only ever seen that arc from what was on Cartoon Network growing up, when it was on the, hey, let's do the things for kids who are in preschool all the time, when they were doing that. And the Duel Academy stuff was always, just showed to be, wow, that's cool. I'm JD Yuki. I'm awesome. Yeah, #1. And anything harder that came later was never shown, and I never saw it. So my entire interpretation of that is cringy at the best of times. But it seems like, from what I understand of the overarching plot, what they're talking about now is similar to what they did there. And just like that, it does seem like a show that's mostly episodic with an overarching theme of, the good guy is also the bad guy. And you're going to find out things as it happens. I really want to know, were they exchanging staff? Were the writers of one season of this taken from something else or inspired by it? Because it seems so incredibly familiar now that it's being pointed out that I can't help but see the comparison here. And it wouldn't even be that odd because there's probably a lot of franchise crossover between Yu-Gi-Oh!, between Digimon, not just because they're both games based on a card, or games and TV shows and movies based on a card game, or a card game based on them. I think technically Yu-Gi-Oh! Did come out before the TV show, even though it was also a manga and the Zero season was weird as F. But I'm wondering if maybe a lot of the staff who wrote one also came into this and just reused the idea in the same way that we previously brought up My War Game and the Summer Wars being the same guy, basically redoing the same plot line in his own way. It literally is, but yeah, I'm wondering if it's that kind of similarity again.
But if that's the case, why does Gulas never do away with Hero? Maybe because he can't? The last time, it was nearly hurting Hero that triggered the loss of his control. Or maybe he's hedging his bets, playing the long game. Theoretically, if he could talk Hero around to syncing with him, he could not only maintain permanent control of the body, but also attain the higher levels of power that he so desperately craves. It's probably both of those things, but...
Ghoulless, Ghoul, Ghost. Okay, I get the title. It's literally the bad guy inhabiting the main Digimon is a ghost. It's a game by the ghost who's named a ghoul.
Maybe, just maybe, he genuinely does like Hero. He may protest, he may deny it, but that just makes Gulas the ultimate tsundere. Or maybe yandere. Initially, he's annoyed that Hero won't sync with him, but as he flies away, he says something interesting.
Little kid voice. Oh? You know how I feel?
He's leaving, so he's not fishing for another sync at this point, and yet it seems like he's genuinely annoyed that Hero doesn't understand him. He didn't choose to be in this pseudo little brother position, but now that he has a brother, he wants to be understood by him. When the others try to stop him from leaving, even though he swats them away with ease, he still stays to make a point, to prove to them exactly how much he doesn't care
She got
about
Yamcha'd.
them. Which, I don't know, I feel like if he didn't care, he wouldn't have cared enough to make that point. Like this is a case of protesting too much? Could it be that Gulas, despite himself, is being changed and affected by his interaction with Hero and everyone else? Either because he's always watching or by virtue of sharing a body with Gammamon, like there's some kind of emotional kickback between the two of them. Well, it's hard to say. It could just be wishful thinking to see Gulas as this deeply damaged soul that secretly craves connection, even while he enacts tyranny. He calls Hero anarchy, but it's clearly dripping with irony and irreverence. When he finally gains dominance over Gammamon, he does so, ironically, by exploiting the love he has for his friends. Is that because he too sees their value, or was he just saying whatever he needed to get what he wanted? The devil can't enter your home until you invite him in. When he was eaten,
He was eaten and then he got better. Okay. Also, Peyton Burrow. Hey, just curious if you're keeping an eye on Frostpunk 2 at all. This game should be, 1/16 of a guardsman miniature? How expensive is a guardsman miniature? Because I'm not are you talking like 1/16 size? I think I've seen some of them, but I don't know the pricing. I was always too afraid to check, and I'm not going to because that still scares me. Also, Frostpunk 2, I still need to beat Frostpunk 1. I mean to stream it again, I just forgot. Maybe later.
his way wasn't the strongest.
Part 5, Endgame. Section 1, a hero... Oh god, they did the pun of Hero's Journey. The star of the show. God, I've seen so many anime play with that trope of Hero's Journey and naming the main character Hero. Looking at you, Gundam Wing. And it's such a stupid joke, but it gets me every time because it's dumb and I love dumb jokes. That said, I am going to be cutting this one here because there's other things I want to check out, well, hopefully before my voice gives out, which is always a case of, is it? I don't know. We're going to find out. Yeah. So I really like what Deep Dive is doing on this one. If you haven't already, there's a link below to go to his channel. Just hit him up. This guy has done 2 videos. Only 2 videos. And it's this level of quality already. So I'm hoping if we can get him to the point where, maybe show that people are watching it, he will get more than the, 2 videos worth of viewers. I want to see a 3rd video on this sometime this decade. And considering how long it took him to do the 2nd video after the first one, that is a very possible question. Yeah. So if it sounds like I'm, trying to get people to go subscribe to this guy, they're right. I am. Do it. Because this is really good. And I like seeing this kind of deep dive into this level of detail for a franchise that I seem to have apparently really fallen out of. I'm very tempted to go buy Digimon cards now. I'm not going to because I am out of the card game scene, damn it. I've got out, man. I've got out. I finally stopped buying Magic cards. Mostly because they put out so many cards that are always exponentially stronger than every other one that it makes it easy not to keep up with anything because you can't. Yeah, I'm not sure that makes it better or worse, but it makes it very much a thing that is a thing of a thingingness. Of a thing. So if you haven't, go hit it up. And I'll see you guys in the next. Sorry, I choked my own air on that one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.